All right, 4 o'clock. Should we start? Do I have a go ahead from everyone? All right. Thanks, Nitin, Samruddhi. Thank you, Ashu. Thank you. So, welcome to this seminar by ISHRAE on energy efficiency the Indian way. My name is Gaurav Shorey. Let me start by giving you a brief background of myself. I am an architect by qualification, unfortunately, and with a post-graduation in construction management from NICMAR. I have spent the last 11 years in the field of energy efficiency, green buildings, so on and so forth, out of which 6 years was spent in Terry as a part of the Griha division. I was the area convener or the head of the Griha cell, and was part of the team that set up the Griha Secretariat, what is now known as the Griha Council. I have been teaching at the School of Planning and Architecture for about 6 years now. And after getting out, we started a company called PSI Energy Private Limited, which worked in energy efficiency. And we also set up an NGO called Swaraj, which was to spread awareness on energy efficiency the Indian way. So I will share with you some ideas and some views on what it means for us to influence energy efficiency the Indian way. Also, I'm an ECBC master trainer. I have trained in my career more than 10,000 people in energy efficiency and green buildings across India, including government officials and private professionals. I have also been part of the UN Habitat training team, training officials internationally in East Africa and in South Korea. So without much further ado, let's begin. Yes, this is very important. A disclaimer, nothing in this presentation is true. It is merely a point of view. To accept it or not is your choice. Whatever we are sharing with you is our experience. The combined experience of the people, the audience in this webinar will be 100 times more than us. So please bear with us. I'm sure you have very different experiences across the country as well. So we'd like to start with this very crucial slide. The fact that the earth is very similar to a tandoori chicken. For the vegetarian people, tandoori gobi or a tandoori cabbage. As it slowly rotates on its axis, the solar radiation per square meter changes as it goes from the equator, traveling through the latitudes upwards towards the pole. And as we transit from the equator towards the poles, slowly and slowly the solar radiation reduces and the temperature gets colder and colder. And that's how global winds are formed. That's how our weather and climate is formed. It's very interesting that all the world's deserts are found at roughly 30 degrees north latitude in and around that region, because that is the first place where the hot winds that rise due to the heating of the earth fall. So whether it is the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, this phenomena is common. Now, if we look at the world is broadly divided into about 29 climate zones as per the Köppen-Geiger classification. And if you look at this classification, why did Köppen divide the world into climate zones? Don't ask me. It was a terrible idea, because this was the beginning of simplification or oversimplification of the climate of the world, and also as a result impact on climate change and sustainable development. What is interesting is this graph. Out of all the countries of the world, for the size of India, we are the only country in the world that has 16 out of those 29 climate zones. China and the United States, of course, are much bigger in terms of land area, roughly 3 to 4 times the land area of India. So this is the climate map of India. Now, most of you will be familiar with the National Building Code climate map, जिसमें we've actually brought down the number of climate zones from 6 to 5. In NBC 2005, we reduced the number of climate zones. So cold and cloudy and cold and sunny were combined into cold. But if you look carefully at this map, and this is a globally accepted convention, we have 16 distinct climate zones. Now, remember I told you nothing in this presentation is true. So even though we have 16 agroclimatic zones, we have 21 agroecological regions. And as soon as we see 21 agroecological regions, we obviously assume that this means that we are going to have 21 distinct agricultural styles covering different types of food and all that we eat. But that also is not true. Because if you look at the food map of India, then each state has different types of food that we eat. And this is because of this map, which is 155 soil types. So ladies and gentlemen, India has 155 soil types. And everything originates from the soil. So if you look at the formula for soil, how is soil formed? There's a very simple mnemonic, it's a very easy way of remembering the formula. CLORPT bolte hain, CLORPT. Climate is formed as a result of organisms that live or organic matter on that climate zone. Then the rainfall and the relief, that is whether it is mountainous or it's plains or it's alluvial soil, etc. Then there is the parent material or the rocks that are lying below the soil, and finally is temperature. So all these things give rise to the soil, and then soil gives rise to all the food that we eat and water that we consume, and the minerals and the chemicals that are mixed in the water give us the kind of physiology that we have. Which is why if you look at the language map of India, we have close to 16,000 dialects. As per the census of India 2011, we have 1,634 distinct mother tongues in India. And as we say in India, in North India, there is a quotation ke har 50 कोस में बोली बदल जाती है. In a very short distance, which is actually walkable, the dialect changes, and it changes quite dramatically. This is observable across India. What is also very interesting is that if you look at where India starts and where India finishes, if you look at the northern tip of India, currently say at about 38, 39 degrees north latitude, you will notice along that same straight line that all developed countries start beyond that line. So if you look at the whole of Europe, if you look at a large part of China, if you look at Korea, if you look at Japan, if you look at a large part of the United States of America, mind you, this is a flattened out map. That line shouldn't be straight, it should be an arc. And as soon as that happens, then all the developed countries who we so lovingly copy in our lives are actually from a distinct climate zone. Now, why? You must be wondering, why am I telling you all this? Because where India finishes, all developed countries start, mean that the coldest climate that India experiences at that latitude will roughly be the warmest climate that most so-called developed countries in the northern latitudes will experience. Let me say that again. If I minus the impact of altitude, because we have mountains in the north, Jammu and Kashmir, if I minus the impact of altitude, then the coldest temperature that India will experience will be the warmest temperature that most developed countries will experience. I am of course talking about this effect without the impact of climate change, because now climate change is throwing Germany's temperature into 32 degrees centigrade, which they've never experienced before. Usko na madhyanajar rakhte hue, this is what you will observe. So this is what nature looks like at the equator. This is what the equatorial people look like. This is what mid-latitude look like. This is what the Indian people or the mid-latitude people look like. This is the northern latitudes, and this is what the northern latitude people look like. So very distinct biodiversity, very distinct people, very distinct climate, very distinct clothes, very distinct languages, very distinct agriculture, very distinct culture, very distinct history. Now, let's start talking about technology and efficiency. We are all familiar with this symbol, efficiency, the ratio of the useful work performed by a machine to the total energy expended or heat taken in. High efficiency refers to a higher ratio. But in the domain of energy, technology these days doesn't really concern itself with actual efficiency. Now, what do I mean by that? Please observe this quotation on the screen. 300 trout are needed to support one man for a year. For the people who are not familiar, a trout is a type of fish. So ये American quotation है. The trout in turn must consume 90,000 frogs. That must consume 27 million grasshoppers that live off 1,000 tons of grass. In geography, this phenomena or this concept is known as trophic levels. Some of you might be familiar with this because we have studied trophic levels back when we were in school. In geography, we studied trophic levels. So trophic levels deal with the energy conversion efficiency of nature, not the energy conversion efficiency of an engine. So what defines energy efficiency in the Indian way? And I've written a hint over there that there is a 1974 Hindi movie titled after this formula. And at this point, I'd like to open this up to the audience that if we were to introduce energy efficiency the Indian way, then how would you start keeping in mind trophic levels? Any suggestions? Audio not lost, I'm opening it up to questions. So if anyone can answer. If we were to introduce or speak about energy efficiency through trophic levels, through natural energy conversion in nature, then what would that sequence be? And there is a title of a Hindi movie, 1974 Hindi movie, that is titled after this formula. Energy efficiency the Indian way. If we were to not rely entirely on technology and we were to rely on natural systems, then how could we be energy efficient? Any guesses? Is this supposed to be one way or can it actually be two way as well? No guess. Ashu Gupta says no guess. Okay, Ashu, I'll give it to you. It's called roti, kapda or makan. This is the sequence of energy efficiency that we have always followed in our country. Roti, uske baad kapda, and uske baad makan. Roti is the food that we eat, kapda is the clothes that we wear, and finally is buildings. At the last level is buildings. Buildings form the last level. Now, if we are to study the concept of thermal comfort, and all of us on this group are familiar with this formula, thermal comfort is a function of metabolic rate, of clothing factor or CLO, of dBT, RH, wind velocity and MRT. Everyone familiar with this formula, right? Now what is interesting over here is these two factors, MET and CLO. Now mostly what we do as system designers is that we do not focus on these two aspects. Let me try and use a pen. Can I use a pen? No, I can't use a pen. Okay, hold on. Okay. Pankaj is saying no audio. No, Pankaj, I was keeping quiet. I was trying to do something. Okay, so everyone is familiar with this formula of thermal comfort. Now, I'd like to address this formula of thermal comfort and how we don't pay attention to these two elements which are crucial for battling climate change in the future. Just a moment. Okay. So what are the low-hanging fruits? Most efficient elements in terms of minimum Conversion steps and maximum efficiency involve impacting MET and CLO by altering our eating habits and our dresses and fabrics respectively. Why are we saying this? We are saying this because there is minimum trophic levels involved in consuming something that is directly sourced from nature. If you think this is not possible, then please see this example. In 2010, Japan recently released something called the dress per season policy. In 2010, the attempt was at a national level to introduce the concept of energy efficiency, but not through technology, through something that we take for granted, which is our clothes. Now, till then, what was happening was in Japan, typical to all developed countries, people would come, and if you have been to Japan, you will know that Japan is a very, very fashion conscious country. So people would wear three-piece suits, they would wear the latest designer labels, and they would come to their offices dressed up in three-piece suits, absolutely state-of-the-art, क्या बोलते हैं उसको, bespoke tailoring, so on and so forth. But in 2010, they realized that all that impacts the clo factor or the clothing factor. And if we were to alter that, then people could actually do with lesser air conditioning, and that could impact energy efficiency at the national level. Here, we are not talking about individual projects. We are talking about what can impact the energy consumption of the country. So if we take the argument of MET and CLO forward, we ignore MET and CLO these days. We focus on energy intensive options like air conditioning, and it has now almost been taken for granted that we will not look at aspects such as MET and CLO. So what is the result of that? In the hottest climate zones in India, and Ashu will be able to corroborate, he lives in Jaipur, that is not entirely the hottest, it gets hotter beyond that towards Jaisalmer and Barmer, but still Jaipur is the capital of Rajasthan. We can all eat foods from cold climates. And again, we all know that there is a massive element of refrigeration and storage that is required to put these foods out into the market. It's not possible to provide a Domino's pizza in a non-air conditioned environment. You don't see people standing on the street flipping pizza in India. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for a reason, and it has a massive environmental impact. It impacts climate change. We consume drinks that are directly sourced from cold climate. A lot of you would have heard this quotation. You would have heard this quotation titled, "A lot can happen over coffee." So I have Dr. Ajit from Rajkot who's asked me, how do you handle MET? Let me give you an example. The simplest thing that you can do to warm up your body in the summers is to have chai and coffee, tea and coffee. You will notice that coffee is mostly grown in very cold climates. Coffee and tea are not grown in the plains. They are grown in the mountains. Traditionally, if you read the history of tea and how it became popular in a place like India, you will notice that tea became popular from the hills of Assam, where a British officer was given the first format of tea by an Indian person to cure his fever. It was not a popular drink at that point of time. In fact, I remember my grandfather telling me that when he was growing up, tea was supposed to be the poor man's drink. He said when someone came to our house in the village, we would give them lassi and doodh and chach. We would never give them tea. And now it is one of the most popular drinks in India. If you notice in places like Bombay, they give you cutting chai, and if you go to the coffee board outlets in Karnataka and in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, they will give you a small cup of coffee. Now, that is very different, because even in countries like Turkey, they give coffee in very small glasses. That much coffee is supposed to spike your metabolism and bring it down in a rapid span of time, thereby cooling your body. But if you go to cafes, coffee shops these days, they will give you half a bucket of coffee. If you ask for a large cup, it is so large that I've seen most people throw it away because it is impossible for us to consume and finish. Now, if I was to take my own example, the time that I was in Terry, on an average, I would drink 6 mugs of coffee in a day. 6 mugs means 2 cups per mug, because we had that Nescafe vending machine. Everybody could go and take free coffee. So I used to drink on an average 12 cups of coffee in a day. I did not understand this phenomena. It was my Ayurvedic doctor who told me, boss, you are a Pith Prakriti person. That means you naturally have a lot of heat in the body and you are uncomfortable in cold climates. If there's too much air conditioning, you feel cold, which is true for me. So he said, because you feel cold, you keep trying to warm up your body by drinking warm drinks. So you don't have to drink 12 cups of coffee. You can even drink 12 cups of hot water. You will be fine. And I started doing that. I just followed what he was saying and I realized it was correct. So metabolic rate is always a function of your diet. The diet is a very local concept. Samruddhi is asking 12 cups. Yes, 12 cups is true. We also wear clothes from cold climates. So it must be made very clear. The fashion industry cannot survive without us. All the people on this group right now listening in on this seminar. The fashion industry does what it does because of architects, because of air conditioning engineers, because of the MEP consultants. If we were to turn off the air conditioning in the next Lakme India Fashion Week, half those people will not be able to spend 2 minutes in those buildings, because those clothes mostly are not designed for the climate that we function in. If you request any of those models go out into the heat of Jaipur and do catwalk in the middle of the road, they'll die. It's not possible. So all that also is a function of us not relying on the basic things like the fiber and the fabric that we wear. In fact, most of my friends today cannot tell the difference between synthetic cloth and cotton. Forget about my friends. If I speak about myself also, if you show me a cotton blend or a mix with polyester, I'll not be able to tell the difference. Whereas our parents could very easily tell the difference. My parents still can. Now, incidentally, the developed countries experience the exact same concept. So if you travel to a place like the United States of America, you will see in New York, there are Ethiopian restaurants. Now, Ethiopia is a completely different climate zone. And there are Afghani restaurants. Of course, there is an element of cold climate. But you can get food from across the world. But all this comes at a very, very, very heavy impact on the climate. A large amount of energy is consumed for all of this. So this is what we eat popularly today. You will also notice, RS is asking me, can you make me the presenter? Yes, RS, can I finish with this? Then perhaps you can be the presenter. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have a lot of things to share. Please notice this image on the screen, or better still, please notice this image on the screen. You will notice small tomatoes, you will notice red bell peppers, you will notice these vegetables that, except for onion and garlic, you will notice that a lot of the vegetables we eat today, zucchini, asparagus, broccoli, these vegetables were not even available when I was growing up. I'm not that old, I'm 37 years old, but still these vegetables were not available till about 10 years back. And now it seems like it is second nature. I went to a friend's house in Bombay, he was giving me broccoli, red, yellow, bell peppers and zucchini. I come over here in Delhi, people are eating the same vegetables. How is that possible, except without some really serious refrigeration and impact on air pollution and climate change? Sodas have a very big impact on our metabolism again. You drink a cold soda with lots of sugar in it. So the cold soda is going to bring your body temperature down, but the sugar is going to spike your energy levels, which requires heat. So in the long run, it is going to impact your metabolism in a negative way, because it's trying to do two opposite things: increase your energy and decrease it at the same time. We end up building this and this and this and this. And in common parlance, these buildings are known as iced tea buildings. Why are they called iced tea buildings? Everyone knows how to make iced tea. We first make tea by boiling the water, bringing it up to boiling temperature, then put tea leaves in it, then wait for it to cool down, then put ice in it, and we make iced tea. These buildings are like that. We put lots of glass, we allow them to heat up a lot, and then put extensive amounts of air conditioning to be able to tackle the heat buildup inside the building. This is a satellite image of Bangalore. This is a satellite image of Hyderabad. This is a satellite image of another part of Delhi by another, I mean that if you look at large parts of Delhi, especially the ones that are not built by the British, you will find this is the density of development. And the result, of course, is apparent. This is the Ghazipur landfill in Delhi. It's a mountain. This is the Okla landfill in Delhi. It is currently about 25 stories high. Now the biggest issue over here is something that has to do with the language that we speak. I am speaking to you in a language called the English language. If I look for solutions for sustainable development in this language, there is a high chance that this is what I will find. People will tell me to use LEDs, they will tell me to use VFDs, solar panels, they will tell me to use solar thermal systems, they will tell me to use electric cars, but none of these things make a difference because they are still relying on the same method that brought about climate change, manufacturing. So what we are saying is that manufacturing caused the problem of pollution across the world and increasing consumption and industrial revolution, so forth and so forth. And now we are saying that if we continue manufacturing new items, we will miraculously be able to solve the problem of climate change, and our cities will not be polluted, and there's going to be absolutely fresh air everywhere if we keep consuming more and more. There is absolutely no logic to that statement, and I don't see how we buy into this. Let's look at this element. Even if that was true, would it work in India? Now, we as a country have 1/3 the land area of the United States of America, and we have roughly 3 times the population. If we look at the 5 most populated cities of India and compare them to the 5 most populated cities of US, this is what we can see. In terms of population, this is what we see. But in terms of land, this is what we see. So the population of Mumbai over here is on this much land, and Delhi is on this much land, and Kolkata is on this much land, and Chennai is on this much land. And currently, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are blindly adopting American codes and standards. We are adopting Western codes and standards and not changing them to suit our climate at all. If we have any doubt, then we go running to the source codes, and all those source codes are not modified for our climate. If you look at the kind of population density we are dealing with in India, this is the population density. So we are looking at population of 22,000, 25,000, now even 30,000 people per square kilometer. And if you compare that to the US, then it's a very, very different scenario. Ashu, do you want me to wait? There are a lot of people who are saying it's not audible. I'm not hearing any voice. Imran has just mentioned. Vikas is saying not audible. Ank, not audible. Samruddhi is saying it's audible. Okay, Anuj is saying you're audible. Okay, yeah, Swapnil, thanks for that recommendation. Try to reload the page. It is audible. Swapnil has suggested loading your page on your screen. Venkatesh has asked, can I make him the presenter? I guess Jitinder can do that after a little while. Okay, so these are the kind of population densities we are dealing with in India. Now it's really crucial for us to understand, if we are dealing with these kind of population densities, then perhaps when we adopt international codes, we need to multiply them by a factor of 25, at least. So whatever EPI or building energy use index they are adopting, we need to go for 25 times higher, because our population density is 25 times higher, as is clear and apparent on the screen, but we don't really do that. So I'm going to share a few case studies with you. Don't take these case studies as the absolute truth. we have attempted integrating the MET and CLO aspect into these buildings and designs. And please note that these buildings are very rare. It's very rare to come across clients who are willing to accept such recommendations. A bulk of our work that we do as energy consultants, the clients would not allow us to do these kind of things. But I'm going to share these case studies because they are examples where everybody, the MEP consultant, the client, the architect, everybody worked in an integrated design manner and came up with the solutions. So this is a building that is proposed at a village called Achikadu, which is halfway between Chennai and Pondicherry roughly. It is on the beach. And this was being worked on by an architect from Chennai, Sheila Sri Prakash, very famous architect, has done a lot of very respectable work. Now in this case, the client told us, gave us a brief that he wanted a international, these days it is very common for people to ask for international standard. We don't realize when we talk about globalization and international doesn't mean anything. Global normally refers to Europe and America. Unfortunately, the biggest continents in the world are Asia and Africa. But globalization does not address the concerns or the practices in Africa and Asia. Nobody says, okay, globalization means that we are now going to get African folk music and Asian cuisine all over the world. That will be the standard. No, it's the other way around. This needs to be observed and it needs to be taken into account. So what did we do in this case? Of course, we were building a building, but we simply followed the local architecture. So if you drive through Tamil Nadu, you will notice that the traditional architecture has deep pitched roof, especially in the coastal parts. The eaves overhang over the walls. So you have to bow your body or bend your body to go into the house. And the walls are also shaded. All the walls from all sides of their village huts are shaded. So we tried to do the same thing. We said, okay, let's not go into complicated designs. Let's try and see how we can follow what the local people are doing. Then of course we made sure that the building is naturally lit. The depth of the lighting goes all the way inside the classroom. So there's minimum requirement of artificial light. They have running lengths. This is known as Patthar Patti in Rajasthan. We were trying to do something similar over there. Running length of shading devices all across the building so that it shades the wall as well as the window. We are not only talking about shading the windows, but also the walls to make sure that there is lesser heat ingress. Then of course we had to do some artificial lighting optimization because this was going for a rating. And we managed to do that as well. But the idea was to try and bring it down to minimum through daylight integration, which is a no-brainer these days. I won't get into this. But what is important for us to note is this factor. We were going in for the adaptive thermal comfort chart based on the TSI studies from the National Building Code. And we got some wonderful research work from Madhavi Indrakanti and of course Professor Awal and all who have done work on adaptive comfort. And we presented this to the client and said that we would like to go in for these kind of temperatures indoors, particularly for the academic block, particularly for places where children are studying. Now, initially the client wanted to go for a fully air-conditioned school. And we told him, based on some Australian research papers, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important to note, Australian research papers that showed the negative impact of air conditioning on school students, particularly on their health, because they go out into the heat, they play football, they play cricket, they play all kinds of sports, their body is very hot, the metabolism is spiking, and then they come indoors into an air-conditioned environment and rapidly the body cools down, then they go out to play again, then they come back. And over time, this is supposed to have an impact on health. These studies are all online. They are open for people to download and study. And based on those studies, the client accepted our recommendation. So we made a discomfort chart, simple discomfort chart in Excel, just to identify which are the hottest parts that cross that 32 degrees threshold of the National Building Code, that we will only need to come up with a strategy which is energy intensive for this period. But again, what was important here was that we told them that the uniform on the school should be made out of the local fabric that the people wear over there, the thinnest possible muslin, cotton. They wear the vesti or the munda over there. The client did not accept that, but we were also suggesting that the uniform should be the same clothes that the local people wear. There should be no difference. But this client was not open to that idea. They felt that it was too radical. We have the residential complex for the teachers, which was designed differently. So this is finally what we were able to achieve in the air-conditioned zones. If you notice, the square foot per TR was, this is still a conservative design. I know a lot of my friends who have done 300, 350 square foot per TR in air-conditioned zones, but we did not want to go for hyper-insulated envelopes because that too has an environmental impact. So this is just through cavity walls. We were able to achieve this kind of energy consumption reduction in this building by integrating the local food and the local clothes into the school's curriculum and the uniform and so on and so forth. Now, if you notice, this is the school in Bhutan that we did. We had an interesting study from Terry, which is in the center column that you see, which gives us the air-conditioned area energy performance index for buildings in cold climates. They did this specifically for Bhutan. We wanted to break this benchmark. We had a lot of building typologies that we were dealing with. This is what the building looked like. This is just one of the buildings. Now, what is important to note over here again is that we simply told the architects, don't use your brains. It's very important to not use your brain. Just see what the local people are doing. How do they build their buildings? What materials do they use? If they have been building buildings like this for hundreds of years, then there will be a reason. This design was for His Majesty the King. It was commissioned by him. It is for again for an international school. But in this case, we were able to convince the client because the Bhutanese people are very proud of their local dress. So we told the client that if you make sure that the school uniform is the Bhutanese national dress, the gho, then we can reduce the heating energy consumption in this building. And we showed them through simulation how that was possible. We just played with the calculations in the MET. We increased the MET to 1.4, 1.5, and then did the heating system calculations. The second thing we told them also was that please make sure that the food that you serve in the mess is sourced from the immediate valley, from the villages that surround the school. Now that allows for employment for a large number of people around the school. The village people can be involved in the school. And these days internationally people are talking about sustainable schools where there are no walls between the local community and the school. You will see traditionally in India, in all big cities, all schools have walls all around them. And there is a big disconnection between the school community and the surrounding community. And that's not sustainable. So we propose them to follow this simple method. This is another shot of that building. Now, one of the problems that we faced in this building by copying the local design was that most of you will be familiar that our traditional buildings, if you see the local architecture in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, if you see the local architecture of Rajasthan, when you go into the Havelis or into the houses, they do not have very high levels of day lighting for a very simple reason that our ancestors spent most of their time outdoors. There is a very interesting website called the Lighting Research Center, LRC, Lighting Research Center. The Lighting Research Center is now doing research on circadian rhythms and establishing beyond a doubt that human beings are outdoor animals. They do better, their melanin, serotonin response, hormone levels and overall health is much better when they are exposed to extensive sunlight. Now you will see in India we have a lot of people who sell sunscreen lotion. Sunscreen lotion is a European product. It is sold in India for no reason. Lot of people in the northern climates do not have melanin production in their body. Their skin turns red. It doesn't tan. If we go into the sun and stay in the sun, our skin naturally tans. It becomes darker. Their skin doesn't tan. It becomes red. And that has a negative impact on health. So they need to use sunscreen lotion that blocks ultraviolet radiation. Over here, it's selling in India like hotcakes. There is absolutely no requirement for selling it over here because our natural skin tone is not fair, especially in the hot climates. Natural skin tone is fair in places like Kashmir, maybe northern regions of Punjab. So if you notice, this is an internal indoor shot of the classroom. These windows that you see over here are blocked out because that is the traditional style. They use opaque board over here. So we had to modify the design to include clerestory windows on the back side also, skylights to increase the indoor penetration of light. This of course is under overcast sky conditions. So you will be familiar that under sunny sky conditions it is going to be much higher. Standard artificial lighting optimization. We also designed a stadium integrating natural light and coming up with lighting levels that Olympians require, 750 lux. So this is the study for that, but that is not important. What is important is that simply by using all these techniques and making sure that the uniform and the food, roti and kapda are optimized, we were able to reduce our energy consumption. What we suggested in this was a radiant floor heating system. We had a big issue over here because Bhutan has excess energy. Bhutan has no shortage of energy. They actually had the option of not going for solar power and solar panels because they said we don't need it. We are exporting power to India, so we don't require all these things. So in all the buildings, they did not have a radiant hydronic based radiant system. Some of the buildings they did a resistance based underfloor heating system. But in all these cases, we were able to drastically bring the energy consumption down by integrating all these elements into the school. Mind you, this is Bhutan, so they accepted the recommendation of food and clothes. They did it very proudly. In India, no client really accepts that. Third project is a government building in Odisha. Here again, we did nothing new. We just used the same techniques that our forefathers have used for donkey's years. We shaded the facade. We made sure there were courtyards at regular intervals. We made sure that the courtyards were also broken up so that they are shaded. And we made sure that there are solar chimneys integrated into the southern face of the building. Now in this case, you can see the solar radiation was brought down from 3000 watt-hour per day to 300 simply by putting louvers on the facade. So just by doing this small thing, we were able to bring it down. In this case, again, we managed to convince the authorities that naturally the people will be eating the local food, they will be drinking the local drinks, and their body will take care of adaptive comfort. We do not need to outsource that to air conditioning. It's very important to note, as soon as we outsource our comfort to air conditioning systems entirely, we cannot do without air conditioning in cities these days, given the footprint size of buildings and the occupancy loads. But if we completely rely on air conditioning, then we will also notice that our diet gets modified. So a lot of people will start demanding for things like pasta and pizza. You will start craving it. Your body will start asking for more of these things. That is a natural response. You change the dry bulb temperature and the relative humidity, your demand for food will change. You are a dynamic system. Your body is a dynamic system. It's not static. It will keep demanding things that are coming from cold climates. So here you can see this transition, that the solar radiation impact was reduced. Natural light was brought into the building as far as possible. Daylight integration. We did the simulations in a software called Design Builder, and we again used the same adaptive comfort chart from the National Building Code. We did the same discomfort chart for occupied hours. We did this kind of a natural ventilation system. This is a forced natural ventilation system by using turbo vents integrated with exhaust fans to increase the air change per hour using night purge ventilation. and this was the impact on energy consumption via the EPI. The cumulative impact of all these can be seen on the screen. Please note, all these interventions, if the client accepts making these interventions, they will have an impact on the capital cost of the project, naturally, because you are reducing the total cooling load, you are reducing the total electrical load, you are reducing the energy consumption. You may need slightly higher cost, but this is more specific to insulated buildings. If you are not doing that, then there is a less likelihood of that incremental cost also happening. Overall, there can be a 4.3% reduction in the cost of the project. And please note that this is for air-conditioned buildings using adaptive comfort. If we were to do naturally ventilated buildings like we did in Pondicherry, in Bhutan and Odisha, then the cost can be brought down by a much wider margin. Which brings me to the concluding slide of this presentation for the time being, after which we can take some questions. You, that is you, the person sitting in the seat listening to this webinar, you have an impact on what people eat and what people wear. Each one of you has an impact on the kind of food that people demand and the kind of clothes that people demand. If there is an increase in the number of malls and the number of foreign brands in this country, it is because of you. If we were not designing air-conditioned buildings, then the demand for these kind of things would not happen the way it does. You, as a result, can impact the energy consumption of the country and the future of your children. You, the person sitting in that seat listening to this webinar, you can impact the energy consumption of the country. Question is, are you willing to take a stand? It's all very good to say all these things, but it takes a lot of emotional, a lot of physical, a lot of intellectual energy to be able to convince the client, who is the person who is investing in the project, to go with these kind of recommendations. And to keep standing there and keep saying, do it, do it, do it. Japan has done it, Australia has done it. Why should I have to take international examples in a country like India? I have no clue. But if those examples are available, then we will take those examples and keep sharing them with people and keep telling them this is possible. This is possible. Please make sure this is possible. And maybe if all of us get together and take this stand as a collective whole, because we are a community, we are not individual people, we are part of an organization. If that organization can take that collective stand, then the impact on the national energy consumption can be phenomenal, unheard of, unprecedented, as a new possibility. That's the concluding slide. Any input for dress code for 16 zones of India? Dr. Ajit, that's a wonderful question. I have not really thought about that, for the simple reason that we only need to look at what the local people and our ancestors were wearing in those climate zones. If we can take examples from that, we may not be able to wear the same dresses, but definitely we can look at the fabrics that those people were wearing and try and give impetus to those fabrics, try and increase the demand for those fabrics, and in the long run it will have an impact on the rural economy as well. But this is a very good question, any dress code. So we can perhaps even research this and put together a compendium that if there are 16 zones in India, then how best can they dress to make sure that their energy consumption goes down. So I'll now open it up for questions. In case there are any questions or queries, please ask away. If you have any comments to make, please ask away. Jitendra, if you have something to add. Ashu, I saw Mani is also on the group. If you have any recommendations, any experiences, anecdotes, personal experiences that you want to share, now would be the time. There was someone called RS who was asking to be made the presenter. Is it possible to perhaps let RS also share his views? I'm not getting any update on the chat screen. Is that normal? Krishnan is talking, but I can't hear anything.
Sir, it is a very nice talk, a very informative one. Can you hear me, sir?
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yes.
It is very informative, sir. I was listening it for the last 1 hour.
Thank you.
Thank you for the nice lecture.
Are there any free tools for analyzing energy consumption due to building envelope? Imran, yes, you can use eQuest. That is not connected to what we are talking about, but you can. What direction should we adopt when we are constructing a building? I think I've shared direction with you. It's actually about setting the threshold for energy consumption in advance and convincing the client to be proud of their local food and local clothes. That should be the first step. If we can do that, then we can do calculations accordingly. Ganesh has a very interesting question. How can foreign clients to adapt to comfort? Now that people are so diversified and met and flow factors would be highly challenging. My recommendation would be very simple. This is a very good question, Ganesh. Thank you for asking. The school that I was talking about in Bhutan was an international school in collaboration with Oxford University. This school is a school for pedagogical studies, which means that it is a school where teachers will learn how to teach. It is also a normal school where students go, but it is a teacher training school. We are expecting people from across the world to come to this school. It is going to take them time for their taste buds to adapt to the local food. But in the long run, we would suggest that the people who are moving from other climates coming to your climate should adapt to your climate and not the other way around. That is the only way that we can continue doing natural farming, organic farming, going back to the local vegetables and the local grains. There is no other way of doing that. And please try and understand, Ganesh, very good question again, that foreign clients will always be a minority in comparison to the number of Indian people there. And the Indian people on an average always have much higher threshold for heat. Most Indian people will not start sweating at 32 degrees, 34 degrees centigrade temperature if they are standing outside. They will not start sweating so soon. So we need to try and understand, we need to design buildings for our population first, for the majority population. And then maybe the cabins where there are some foreign people who are our guests are staying, there the temperature can be throttled, or you could perhaps have lower set points over there. How can we control the heat if many buildings are cooled? I don't know how that question is relevant to my presentation, Shanmuganathan. If you can please elaborate on the question, I would love to answer it. Because I don't know how that's connected to what I was talking about in terms of MET and CLO values. So Jitendra has posted that you can provide your feedback about the webinar. I would like to thank Ashu and Jitendra to put this together, and of course all the folks at ISHRAE headquarters who I was torturing them till the last minute. My presentation was not ready, but thank you so much for organizing this.
All right, so Gaurav, Ashu here.
Hi,
thank you everyone. Hi Gaurav, and thank you so much for your time to giving us to ISHRAE, that we all members are really appreciate your efforts, that what you are doing. We already had been your TEDx talk. So thank you guys, thank you everyone. It's the first initiative taken by ISHRAE as a webinar, and I'm sure there are some lot of improvement required in the audio and the video things. But I'm sure, please give us your feedback, and we will keep this on a monthly webinar to all ISHRAE members. And please suggest your suggestions as well. If you want to hear something specific on some topic, we will find out the speaker and will arrange those things for our members. Thank you everyone. And this presentation will also upload on the YouTube channel of ISHRAE. So whenever someone wants to go through again this presentation, so viewership, of course, they can view on YouTube channel there. Thank you. And really thanks to Gaurav. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Ashu. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.